My name is Watson Hale. For most of the world, I am known as a man of power, wealth, and influence, a businessman whose decisions shape markets and move mountains of money. But behind the tall glass walls of my empire, I am just a man broken by loss, trapped in a mansion that echoes with silence. 2 years ago, my wife, Amara, passed away. Cancer stole her slowly, like a cruel thief that lingered until it left only emptiness in its place. She was the heart of our home, the laughter in our halls, the glue that held my world together. When she was gone, I thought I could survive by throwing myself into work. I told myself that if I made enough money, built enough, expanded enough, I could distract myself from the ache. But grief isn't fooled by gold or glass. Grief seeps into the cracks of your soul. It waited for me in every corner of my mansion. It whispered in the silence when I returned home late at night. It looked back at me in the tired eyes of my 2 children. Ethan, my 8-year-old son, was once vibrant, full of questions about dinosaurs, astronauts, and why the stars twinkled. Now he spends long hours staring at his toys, his laughter fading into a quiet murmur of what it once was. Sophia, my 6-year-old daughter, had inherited Amara's smile. But now, even when she smiled, it carried a weight, a forced cheerfulness, as if she knew she had to be strong because her father no longer knew how. I became a shadow in their lives. I left early for work before they woke and returned home after they were asleep. Their bedtime stories remained unread, their scraped knees unattended by my hands, their dreams unheard. I thought giving them the best tutors, the best food, and every luxury money could buy was enough. But deep down, I knew I was failing them. The mansion, despite its towering chandeliers, grand staircases, and endless rooms, felt hollow. What use is a home without warmth, without laughter echoing through the halls? I was a father in title, but not in presence. I told myself I was protecting them from my grief by keeping my distance, but the truth was, I didn't know how to face them without breaking. And yet, fate has a strange way of confronting us when we least expect it. That day began like any other. I was sitting in my office, signing documents, listening to advisors, nodding at presentations, but not hearing a word. The city skyline stretched out beyond my glass windows, yet I felt caged in my own success. For reasons I couldn't explain, I suddenly felt a pull, an ache in my chest that urged me to leave early. Maybe it was guilt, maybe it was exhaustion, or maybe it was Amara's spirit whispering that my children needed me. I told my driver to take me home. As the car rolled into the driveway, the mansion loomed ahead like a fortress, cold and uninviting. But as soon as I stepped inside, something was different. The scent of chocolate drifted through the halls, sweet, rich, warm. A sound followed next, laughter. Genuine, unrestrained laughter. It wasn't the hollow echo of polite smiles I was used to. It was the laughter of children, free and full of life. I froze. My children, laughing? I followed the sound, my heart racing. When I reached the dining room, I stopped in my tracks. There, standing in the center, was a young woman I had never seen before. She wore a green uniform with a white collar and pockets, her hair neatly tied back. She carried herself with grace, but it wasn't her uniform that caught my attention. It was her smile. A smile so warm, so genuine, that it lit up the entire room. On the table sat a large chocolate cake, decorated with cream swirls and fruit toppings. The young woman was carefully serving slices to my children. Ethan was grinning from ear to ear, his face smeared with chocolate, while Sophia clapped her hands in delight, her laughter like music. For a moment I just stood there in silence, watching. My children were alive again. Their eyes sparkled. Their joy was real. And the woman, who I would later come to know as Kajal, looked at them with such tenderness, as if she had known them her whole life. She bent down, wiping a smear of cream from Sophia's cheek, and laughed along with them. I felt something I hadn't felt in years. My eyes stinging, my chest tightening. This mansion had not seen such life since Samara's passing. And it wasn't me who had brought it back. It was this young maid, this stranger, who had done what all my wealth could not. She had given my children their laughter again. I leaned against the doorframe, hidden from their view. My throat ached. My hands trembled. For the first time in years, tears welled in my eyes. Not from loss, but from witnessing a glimpse of what I thought I had lost forever. And in that moment, I knew my life was about to change in ways I could not yet imagine. I stood there in the doorway, frozen, as if time itself had decided to pause. My eyes drank in the sight before me. A scene so ordinary, yet for me it was extraordinary. Ethan was laughing so hard that he nearly toppled off his chair, clutching his stomach as chocolate smeared across his chin. Sophia was clapping her hands in delight, squealing as the young woman, Kajal, pretended to hide a slice of cake behind her back before revealing it again with a playful grin. My children's joy was pure, unfiltered, alive. For 2 long years, I had prayed to hear that sound again. 2 years of birthdays that felt hollow, of holidays where laughter had been replaced with silence. And now, standing in my own home, I was hearing the melody of happiness once more. But the cruel twist was, it wasn't because of me. It was because of her. I pressed a hand against the polished wooden doorframe to steady myself. My knees felt weak. Watson Hale, the man who had faced down billion-dollar deals and negotiated across continents, was trembling like a child. Who was she? She wasn't dressed like one of the regular house staff. Our staff usually kept to a rigid professionalism, polite, efficient, and distant. But this woman, she was different. She didn't just serve food. She served love. Her laughter wasn't forced. It was genuine. The way she bent down to listen when Sophia whispered something in her ear. The way she let Ethan smear a bit of cream on her hand without scolding him. It was as if she belonged. And my children, who had barely spoken above whispers for months, were suddenly brimming with chatter. Ethan was telling her about his toy airplane, waving his hands in dramatic motions, while Sophia tried to feed her a spoonful of cake, insisting she taste it. I bit my lip, my emotions threatening to spill. I had spent fortunes to bring light into my children's lives. Therapists, caretakers, expensive tutors, yet none had succeeded. And here was this young woman, a stranger, melting the ice around their hearts with nothing but kindness and cake. For a moment I felt something I rarely felt, humility. I could have turned away. I could have walked back to my study and pretended I never saw this. But something inside me, perhaps the part of me that was still a father, still a man desperate for healing, kept me rooted there, unable to move. Finally, Kajal noticed me. Her eyes widened slightly, a flicker of surprise crossing her face. She stood upright quickly, smoothing down her green uniform, almost as if she'd been caught doing something wrong. But then, she saw my expression. My trembling lips, the tears threatening in my eyes, and her face softened. "Mr. Hale," she said softly, her voice respectful yet warm. "I didn't hear you come in." The children turned at once. "Daddy!" Sophia cried, leaping from her chair and rushing toward me. Ethan followed, both of them wrapping their little arms around my legs. Their excitement hit me like a wave, and I knelt down, pulling them close. It had been so long since I'd felt their arms around me like this. "Daddy, Kajal made us cake," Ethan shouted proudly, his face lit up with joy. "She knows Mommy used to make it too." That single sentence pierced my heart. Amara, she was a maid. Or at least that's what I had been told when she was hired. So why did it feel like she carried something deeper? Couldn't sleep. I poured myself a glass of whiskey, sat in the leather chair by the fireplace, and stared at the flames. Amara's memory surfaced again. Her voice, her smile, the way she used to tell me, "Watson, the children don't need perfection, they need presence." I had failed her in that. And then there was Kajal. Who was she, really? The next morning, I rose earlier than usual. Normally, I left for work before sunrise, but today, I lingered, determined to observe. I found her in the kitchen, humming softly as she prepared breakfast. The aroma of freshly baked bread and scrambled eggs filled the air. She didn't notice me at first. She was focused, yet gentle in her movements, as if every task, no matter how small, mattered. "Good morning," I said finally, my voice breaking the silence. She turned, startled, then gave me a polite nod. "Good morning, Mr. Hale." I stepped closer, studying her face in the morning light. She was young, mid-20s, perhaps. Her features were delicate, but there was strength in her eyes, a quiet resilience. "You've been with us for a few weeks, you said?" I asked. "Yes, sir. I came when one of the staff left unexpectedly." "And before this?" I pressed. For a moment, something flickered across her face. Her hands stilled on the bread knife. But then, she composed herself. "I worked different jobs. Cafes, hospitals, sometimes as a caretaker. Wherever I was needed." Her answer was vague, almost rehearsed. I sensed there was more behind it, but I didn't push further. Instead, I asked, "Why do you care so much about my children?" The question seemed to catch her off guard. She looked at me then, really looked at me, her eyes steady. "Because they need someone to care. Children should never have to feel alone." The simplicity of her answer pierced me. At that moment, Ethan and Sophia bounded into the kitchen, their faces lighting up at the sight of her. "Kajal!" Sophia squealed, running to hug her waist. Ethan tugged at her sleeve, already chattering about a dream he had. And just like that, she shifted her focus completely to them, crouching down to their level, listening intently, laughing, responding as if their words were treasures. I watched silently, realizing something that shook me. My children trusted her more than they trusted me. That evening, when the staff had gone about their duties and the children were playing in the garden, I found Kajal in the library. She was dusting the shelves, her eyes scanning over the rows of books. Something about the way she lingered on the titles told me she wasn't just cleaning. She was reading silently, absorbing. "You like books?" I asked, stepping inside. She jumped slightly, then smiled faintly. "Yes, they've always been my escape." "Escape?" I repeated. Her expression faltered, and for a brief second, I saw vulnerability there, a shadow of a story untold. But then she straightened, masking it with calm. "Stories can give us hope, sir. They remind us that even in the darkest chapters, light can return." Her words lingered in the air, more profound than she perhaps intended. That was the first night I realized Kajal wasn't just a maid. She was a woman with depth, carrying her own scars. The following days only deepened my curiosity. She wasn't perfect. Sometimes she dropped things, sometimes she burned the toast, but her heart was undeniable. She remembered the little things about the children. Ethan loved airplanes, so she folded paper planes with him, letting them race across the hallways. Sophia loved to draw, so Kajal sat with her, sketching flowers and butterflies, even if her own drawings were clumsy. And each night, she tucked them in with stories. Not fairy tales from books, but her own stories. Tales of courage, kindness, and resilience. I would sometimes stand outside the doorway, listening as my children drifted into dreams with smiles on their faces. Slowly, without realizing it, I began to depend on her presence too. One evening after dinner, I asked her to sit with me in the lounge. She seemed hesitant at first, but then obliged. "Why do you smile so much?" I asked bluntly. Her brows furrowed. "Is that a bad thing?" "No," I admitted. "But I wonder if it's real. You smile even when you're tired, even when no one is looking." She was quiet for a moment, then said softly, "Because sometimes a smile is the only light we can give others, even if inside we're still healing." Her honesty struck me like a blow. I wanted to ask more. What pain she carried, what wounds made her speak like that. But before I could, Sophia came running in, dragging Kajal by the hand, demanding she play another round of hide and seek. And just like that, the moment was gone. But the question lingered in my heart. Who was Kajal, really? She wasn't just a maid. She wasn't just someone passing through. She was someone who understood grief, who carried a light despite her own darkness. Someone who had walked into my mansion of shadows and dared to bring sunshine back into it. That night, as I watched my children sleeping peacefully, I realized something profound. Kajal wasn't just healing them. She was healing me too. And though I didn't yet know her story, one thing was certain. She was no ordinary woman. She was the woman behind the smile that had resurrected my family. Watson had spent the next few days lost in thought. The image of Kajal in his home, her voice, her sincerity, the way she had cared for Lily without hesitation, lingered in his mind. For years, his mansion had been nothing more than walls filled with silence. But ever since Kajal stepped inside, something had changed. The laughter of his daughter rang differently now, warmer, freer, as if Kajal had unlocked something Watson himself had long forgotten how to give. It was a bright morning when Watson found himself standing by the large glass doors that opened to the garden. Lily was outside, running barefoot across the grass with Kajal chasing her, both of them laughing so hard that Watson almost forgot his grief. Lily stopped abruptly and clutched her side. "Papa, Kajal runs faster than me?" she exclaimed, half laughing, half out of breath. Watson smiled, but it was Kajal's laughter that pulled his heartstrings. She was not a guest anymore. Somehow, without him realizing, she had woven herself into the rhythm of their lives. Later that afternoon, while Lily napped, Kajal stood in the kitchen, trying to prepare something for tea. Watson found her struggling with the oven settings. "You don't have to do that," Watson said gently, stepping in. Kajal turned, slightly flustered. "I just wanted to make something Lily likes. She said you used to bake cookies with her with her mother." The way she spoke his late wife's name carefully, almost respectfully, stirred something deep within him. Watson moved closer, guiding her hands on the oven dial. "It's not about perfect cookies. It's about the time spent together." Their eyes met, and for a brief moment, silence stretched between them. An unspoken understanding, a recognition of shared loneliness. Kajal quickly looked away, but her cheeks flushed with a warmth that neither of them could deny. That evening, Watson invited Kajal to sit with him in the library, where the fire crackled softly. Lily had gone to bed early, exhausted from the day's games. "You've changed this house," Watson said suddenly. Kajal blinked. I didn't mean to intrude." "You didn't intrude," Watson interrupted, his voice steady but softer than usual. "You brought life into it again. For years, I thought this mansion would remain a monument to my grief. But seeing you with Lily, I see hope again." Kajal's throat tightened. She had been through her own struggles, working day and night to make ends meet, carrying the burden of being misunderstood, and yet here, with Watson and Lily, she felt like she belonged somewhere for the first time in years. "Watson," she whispered, "sometimes the people we meet unexpectedly are the ones meant to heal us." He leaned back in his chair, his gaze lingering on her. You speak as though you've lived through loss too. Kajal's smile was faint but heavy with unspoken memories. I have. Enough to know that scars don't fade easily. But they don't have to define us forever. For the first time in a long while, Watson felt like someone saw him not as the billionaire, not as the widowed father, but as a man who was still learning to breathe after heartbreak. The days that followed only deepened their connection. Kajal would help Lily with her homework, teaching her little songs in her mother tongue, filling the mansion with melodies it hadn't heard before. Watson would watch quietly, his heart swelling with gratitude and something more he dared not name. One afternoon, as Watson prepared to leave for a business meeting, Lily clung to his coat. Papa, don't go. Stay with us. He knelt down, brushing her hair gently. I'll be back before dinner. But then Lily's next words pierced him deeply. Can Kajal stay here when you go? I feel safe when she's around. Watson's eyes flicked to Kajal, who stood nearby, her expression both touched and uncertain. He nodded. Of course, Kajal will be here. As he drove away, Watson realized something. His daughter wasn't just asking for company. She was asking for family. That night, when Watson returned, he found the dining room glowing with candlelight. Kajal and Lily had decorated the table with wildflowers they picked from the garden. Lily jumped into his arms as he walked in. Papa! Kajal taught me how to set the table like in fairy tales. Watson's heart swelled, but it was Kajal's shy smile across the table that held his gaze longer than he intended. They ate together, laughed together, and for the first time since his wife's passing, Watson didn't feel like he was eating in an empty house. After Lily went to bed, Watson and Kajal lingered in the quiet. You didn't have to do all this, Watson said softly. I know, Kajal replied, her eyes lowering. But sometimes, creating little moments of joy is all we can do to honor the ones we lost. Watson's breath caught. He wanted to ask about her past, to know the pain behind her gentle strength, but he stopped himself. He realized something far more important. He didn't just want to know Kajal's story. He wanted her in his. And though neither of them said it aloud, the bond between them had already begun to grow into something deeper. Something fragile yet powerful, like the first bloom after a long winter. Watson stood on the balcony of his mansion, staring into the horizon where the sun dipped low, painting the sky in streaks of amber and violet. The estate was silent except for the soft whistle of the wind against the trees and the faint trickle of the fountain below. It should have been peaceful, but his heart was restless. He hadn't expected his life to shift so much after Kajal stepped into it. For years, Watson had been a widower, carrying his grief like a badge no one could touch. His late wife, Eliza, had been his world, and when she passed, he buried his laughter with her. He'd raised his son, Daniel, with quiet discipline, ensuring he lacked nothing material, but the boy often felt the absence of warmth. Watson thought he was doing enough until Kajal came. She had unraveled truths in his household with her gentle ways, truths he had ignored for far too long. That evening, he overheard something that rooted him to the spot. From the open window, Daniel's voice carried into the twilight. He was speaking to Kajal in the library, his tone soft, almost vulnerable. You remind me of Mom, Daniel whispered. Not because you're the same, but because you care. And I miss that. Dad doesn't know how to show it. Kajal didn't answer immediately. Watson leaned against the cold stone of the balcony, his throat tightening. He wasn't supposed to listen, yet he couldn't walk away. Finally, Kajal spoke. Your father loves you, Daniel. Sometimes people love so much, they're afraid to show it. But I can see it in his eyes whenever he looks at you. He just carries his pain differently. Watson pressed a hand to his chest, as though to steady the ache inside. The honesty of her words pierced him. She didn't pity him, nor did she judge him. She simply understood. A gift he hadn't realized he needed. That night, he found himself restless. He walked through the mansion's long halls, the marble floors echoing beneath his feet. He stopped outside the kitchen where Kajal sat alone, sketching on a small notebook, her head bent, a candle flickering beside her. He stepped closer. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked gently. Kajal looked up, startled, before offering a shy smile. "I was just drawing. It helps me think." "What do you draw?" She hesitated before turning the notebook toward him. It was a sketch of the mansion, but not as it was now, lonely and imposing. She had drawn it with open doors, children playing in the garden, laughter etched into the lines. It was the mansion as it could be, alive again. Watson's throat grew tight. "That's beautiful," he murmured. "I haven't seen this place like that in a long time." Kajal tilted her head. "Maybe it's time it becomes like that again." For the first time in years, Watson laughed softly, the sound surprising even him. "You make it sound so simple." "Sometimes," Kajal said with a quiet strength, "healing is simple. It just takes courage to open the right doors." Their eyes met in the candlelight, and something unspoken passed between them, an understanding deeper than words. Kajal wasn't trying to replace what he'd lost. She wasn't trying to fix him. She was simply standing beside his brokenness, reminding him that even shattered hearts could beat again. The next morning, Watson decided to act on something he'd long avoided. He called Daniel to the garden, where the boy often played alone. Watson sat on the grass beside him, awkward at first. "Daniel," he began, his voice unsteady. "I heard what you said last night, about me not showing you how much I care." Daniel's face turned crimson. "You were listening?" "I didn't mean to," Watson admitted, his voice low. "But you were right. I haven't been the best at showing my feelings. Losing your mother, it broke me, son. But it doesn't mean I don't love you with everything I have." For a moment, Daniel just stared at him, wide-eyed. Then the boy leaned forward and hugged him, tight and fierce. "I just wanted to hear you say it, Dad." Watson closed his eyes, holding him, and for the first time in years, the walls around his heart began to crumble. From the terrace above, Kajal watched quietly, her hands clasped to her chest. She didn't intrude, didn't make her presence known. It was their moment, a father and son finding their way back to each other. Later that evening, Watson found Kajal near the fountain, her dress swaying in the soft breeze. She was gazing at the water, lost in thought. He approached slowly, the crunch of gravel under his shoes announcing him. "Kajal," he said softly. She turned, her dark eyes warm yet cautious. "Yes." He hesitated, searching for the right words. "You've done something I didn't think was possible. You've reminded me what it means to feel alive again. And for that, I owe you more than gratitude." Her expression softened. "You don't owe me anything, Watson. Sometimes life just brings people together at the right time." "But why you?" His voice cracked slightly, betraying the storm inside him. "Out of all the people who could have walked into my life, why did it have to be you?" Kajal smiled faintly, though her eyes glistened. "Maybe because you were ready to see that love doesn't end when someone is gone. It just changes form." Watson felt something stir in him, something fragile yet powerful. For years, he had believed his heart had no room for anything but grief. But now, standing in the moonlight with Kajal, he realized that perhaps love had been waiting patiently for him to find it again. He didn't reach for her hand yet. It wasn't the time. But as they stood side by side, watching the fountain shimmer under the night sky, both knew that a door had quietly opened in Watson's life, one neither of them could close again. The next morning, Watson woke up to a silence that was not empty, but peaceful. For years, silence in his mansion had meant loneliness, but now it felt like calm after a storm. He walked out of his room and saw Kajal in the garden, watering the flowers with Mia beside her. The little girl was laughing as Kajal sprinkled water on her like rain. Watson paused at the doorway, his chest tightening. For the first time in so long, he saw what his mansion had been missing. Not chandeliers, not expensive art, not grand furniture, but warmth, love, family. Later that day, Watson invited Kajal to sit with him in the library. He was nervous, something rare for a man of his stature. She sat quietly, folding her hands on her lap, waiting for him to speak. Kajal, Watson began softly, you came here as a caretaker, but in truth, you've cared for much more than Mia. You've cared for me too. You've reminded me that life doesn't end with loss. It can begin again. Her eyes widened slightly, her heart racing at his words. Mr. Watson, she whispered. He gently took her hand. I don't want to be Mr. Watson to you anymore. Just Watson. A man who wants to share his life with you, if you'll allow it. Tears filled Kajal's eyes. She had never expected her journey of struggle, honesty, and kindness to lead her here. I was only trying to do my duty, she said, her voice trembling. But somewhere along the way, Mia became like my own daughter. And you became someone I respected and admired more than anyone. Watson smiled. A genuine, heartfelt smile that had been lost for years. Then let's not let this end here. Be part of our family. Not as Mia's caretaker, but as her mother. And as my partner. Kajal's tears spilled as she nodded, unable to speak. Mia, who had been listening from the doorway, ran inside and hugged them both. So now we're really a family? She asked with innocent hope. Watson lifted her into his arms, looking at Kajal with unshakable certainty. Yes, Mia. From today, we are truly a family. The mansion, once filled with silence and sorrow, now echoed with laughter, footsteps, and love. Watson knew he could never replace his late wife, but with Kajal, he had found a new chapter, not built on forgetting the past, but on honoring it while embracing the future. And so, the widowed millionaire who once lived in a golden cage finally found the greatest treasure he never expected: love, family, and a second chance at happiness.